You think you can play games in my terminal? This ticket is trash. It's fake, just like that watch on your wrist. Touch me again and you lose more than your job. Check the code. I did check it. It doesn't exist in the system. You're going to jail for fraud, boy. You just declared war on the wrong family. The air in Terminal 4 of the Metro International Airport always smelled of stale coffee, anxiety, and the faint, chemically lemon scent of floor polish that never quite masked the odor of thousands of rushing bodies. For Nathaniel Armitage, it was a smell he usually skipped entirely. He was accustomed to the private tarmac, to the quiet hum of a luxury SUV driving him directly to the stairs of a Gulf Stream. But today was different. Today was a test. A wager, actually, made with Elias Kingsley, his grandfather's oldest friend and the executor of the Armitage Trust. Walk among them, Nathaniel. See how the world spins when you don't grease the gears with gold first. Nathaniel adjusted the hood of his slate-gray sweatshirt. It looked worn, the cuffs slightly frayed, but the fabric was a rare vicuña wool blend that cost more than the Honda Civic parked in the employee lot outside. He wore faded jeans and scuffed sneakers. At 19, with his headphones around his neck and a backpack slung over one shoulder, he looked like any other college student heading home for the holidays. He approached the priority check-in line. The digital sign above it glowed with the elitist gold lettering, Prestige Class and Diplomats. There were 3 people ahead of him, 2 men in charcoal suits discussing a merger in hushed, aggressive tones, and a woman drowning in faux fur, wrestling with a Louis Vuitton carry-on that was clearly over the weight limit. Behind the counter stood Selena Crane. She was a woman who wore her authority like a weapon. Her uniform was impeccable, not a wrinkle in sight, her name tag gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it pulled at the corners of her eyes, giving her a permanent expression of skepticism. She smiled at the men in suits, a practiced, saccharine showing of teeth that didn't reach her eyes, and waved them through with a cheerful, "Have a wonderful flight, gentlemen." When Nathaniel stepped up to the podium, the smile vanished instantly. It was like a shutter slamming down over a window. Selena didn't greet him. She didn't ask for his passport. She simply looked at his chest, then at his face, and then pointed a manicured finger toward the other end of the hall. Economy check-in is rows 40 through 60. You're in the prestige lane, Selena said, her voice flat and nasal. She immediately looked down at her computer, dismissing him before he had even spoken. Nathaniel didn't move. He placed his passport on the high counter, followed by a printed boarding document. It wasn't the standard thermal paper, it was a heavy cardstock with a QR code and a single serial number embossed in black. "I know where I am," Nathaniel said softly. His voice was deep, resonant, and possessed a calmness that usually unsettled people. "I'm checking in for the 2 p.m. departure." Selena sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of air that signaled she was already exhausted by his presence. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Sir, I don't think you understand. This line is for verified prestige members and diplomatic envoys. If you're looking for a standby ticket or trying to upgrade with miles, you need to go to the customer service desk near the restrooms." "Scan the document, Selena," Nathaniel said. He used her name. He hadn't meant to sound arrogant, but the dismissal irked him. Selena flinched at the use of her name. She snatched the cardstock from the counter with 2 fingers, holding it as if it were contaminated. "You can't just print things off the internet and expect them to work. This doesn't even have a flight number. It just says, arrival sequence." She scoffed, a sharp, ugly sound. "What is this? A prank?" "It's a pre-clearance code," Nathaniel explained, his patience thinning but his face remaining impassive. "It overrides the standard ticketing system. Just run it through the scanner." Selena rolled her eyes, glancing at the long line forming behind Nathaniel. People were starting to mutter. The woman in the faux fur tapped her foot loudly. "Fine. I'll scan it so the machine can tell you you're wrong and then you can leave," Selena said. She shoved the card under the red laser of her scanner. Beep. The terminal screen flashed. It didn't turn green. It didn't turn red. It turned a solid, blinking blue. A message popped up that Selina had likely never seen before. Authorization pending. Level 10 clearance required. Selina blinked. She hit the escape key. The screen didn't move. She hit it again, harder. The blue screen pulsed. "See?" Selina snapped, turning the monitor slightly away so he couldn't see the specific error, interpreting the anomaly as a malfunction caused by a fraudulent ticket. "You crashed my system. This code is corrupt. Where did you get this? Did you buy this off some scalper website?" "It's not corrupt. It's waiting for a biometric override," Nathaniel said. "If you put your thumb on the verification pad, it will prompt for a manager's key." "I am not putting my thumb anywhere for a fake ticket," Selina hissed, her voice rising an octave. She wanted to make a scene. She wanted the audience behind him to know she was doing her job, protecting the sanctity of the prestige lane from the riffraff. "You are holding up paying customers. I'm going to ask you to step aside." "I have a flight to catch," Nathaniel stated, holding his ground. He didn't lean in, didn't posture, just stood like a statue rooted in the earth. "There is no flight," Selina shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. "There are no flights leaving at 2 p.m. from this terminal. The next departure is a Delta flight to London at 2:45. You are trying to scam your way into the lounge, aren't you? You think you can flash a fake piece of paper and go eat the free shrimp?" The accusation hung in the air, heavy and racially charged. The muttering behind Nathaniel grew louder. Someone whispered, "Just call the police." Nathaniel looked Selina dead in the eye. "I don't eat shrimp. I'm allergic. And I advise you to call your supervisor before you do something you can't undo." Selina's face flushed a patchy red. She reached for the phone on her desk, but she didn't dial a supervisor. She hit the speed dial for security command. "This is Counter 4, she spoke into the receiver, her eyes never leaving Nathaniel's face, glittering with malicious triumph. "I have a code orange. Attempted breach. Individual is non-compliant and possibly hostile. Send assistance immediately." Nathaniel sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "You really shouldn't have done that." "Security is on the way," Selina smirked, crossing her arms over her chest. "Let's see how tough you are when Mr. Beaumont gets here." Cassian Beaumont didn't walk, he marched. As the head of terminal security, he viewed the airport not as a transportation hub, but as his personal fiefdom. He was a man of average height who compensated with lifts in his shoes and a tactical vest that was completely unnecessary for an indoor environment. His uniform was tailored tight to show off gym muscles that were more for show than utility. He arrived at the prestige counter flanked by 2 junior officers who looked nervous. Cassian, however, looked hungry. A code orange in the prestige lane was the highlight of his day. It meant he got to exert power in front of the wealthy. "Problem, Ms. Crane?" Cassian boomed, his voice projecting so the back of the line could hear. "He's refusing to leave, sir," Selina said, pointing an accusatory finger at Nathaniel. "He crashed my computer with a bootleg ticket and is demanding access to the tarmac. He's claiming he has a level 10 clearance." Cassian turned to Nathaniel. He looked the boy up and down, taking in the frayed hoodie, the sneakers, the relaxed posture. He saw a kid who didn't belong. He saw a stereotype. He didn't see the predator hiding in the grass. "Level 10, Cassian chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Even the president only shows up as a level 8 in our system. You think you're higher than the president, son?" "I'm not your son," Nathaniel said calmly, "and I don't care about your numbering system. I need to be on the tarmac in 20 minutes. Cassian stepped into Nathaniel's personal space. It was a classic intimidation tactic. He reeked of peppermint gum and cheap cologne. "Let me see ID and that ticket." Nathaniel handed over his passport and the cardstock. Cassian opened the passport. He glanced at the photo, then at Nathaniel. He didn't look at the stamps. Stamps from Geneva, Tokyo, Dubai, Singapore. He didn't notice the passport was slightly thicker than standard, containing the RF chips for diplomatic immunity in 3 distinct nations. He just saw a young black face. Nathaniel Armitage. Cassian read the name with deliberate slowness, mocking it. Sounds fancy. Stolen? Mine, Nathaniel said. Cassian examined the cardstock ticket. No airline logo, no barcode standard to IATA regulations, just a QR code and a serial number. He looked up, his jaw set. This is a forgery. A bad one. You trying to sneak onto a plane? Maybe smuggle something? Scan the QR code with your hand held, Nathaniel suggested. It will verify my identity. I'm not scanning malware onto my government-issued device, Cassian snapped. Turn around, hands behind your back. On what grounds? Nathaniel asked. He didn't move. Trespassing, attempted fraud, disruption of peace, failing to comply with a federal security officer. Cassian rattled off the list like a menu. And if you keep talking back, I'll add resisting arrest. I haven't resisted, Nathaniel noted. I'm asking you to verify my credentials. Your credentials are fake, Cassian shouted, his temper flaring. He grabbed Nathaniel's arm. Nathaniel's muscles tensed, hard as iron beneath the soft wool of his sweatshirt. For a split second, violence hung in the air. Nathaniel knew 7 different ways to disable Cassian before the man could draw the taser on his belt, but that wasn't the plan. Elias Kingsley had said, "Let them show you who they are." Nathaniel relaxed his arm. Fine, I'll come with you, but you are making a mistake. The only mistake was you thinking you could walk into my airport and play games, Cassian sneered. He shoved Nathaniel forward. Move! To the holding room! We're going to search everything! As they marched him away, the crowd watched. Some filmed with their phones. Most looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Selena Crane watched from her podium, a smug smile plastered on her face as she reset her computer. Sorry about that, folks, she called out to the line. We have to be so careful these days. You never know who is trying to get in. Nathaniel kept his head up as he was paraded through the terminal. He caught the eye of a girl standing near a coffee kiosk. She had bright purple hair and was holding a professional-grade camera. A vlogger, likely. She was filming him. He gave her a subtle nod. She didn't look away. She zoomed in. They reached the security office, a nondescript gray door nestled between a bathroom and a vending machine. Cassian swiped his badge and shoved Nathaniel inside. The room was stark. Cinderblock walls painted a depressing beige, a metal table bolted to the floor, and a 2-way mirror that everyone knew was fake because the room was too small for an observation deck behind it. Sit, Cassian commanded, pointing to the metal chair. Nathaniel sat. He placed his hands on the table, fingers interlaced. Empty your pockets. Backpack on the floor, Cassian ordered. The 2 junior officers stood by the door, arms crossed, trying to look menacing. Nathaniel complied. He placed his phone, a sleek, unbranded device made of matte black titanium, on the table. Next to it, he placed a slim wallet and a set of keys that looked more like encrypted USB drives. Cassian picked up the phone. Unlock it. No, Nathaniel said. Cassian slammed the phone down on the table. You are in a federal facility. I have the right to search this device for evidence of your fraud. You have the right to scan for weapons and explosives, Nathaniel corrected him, his knowledge of the law precise and irritating to the older man. You do not have the right to access my personal data without a warrant, and you won't get a warrant for a ticketing dispute. Cassian's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. He hated lawyers, and this kid sounded like a lawyer. You think you're smart? We'll see how smart you are when the FBI gets here. We run a check on this credit card you used to buy that fake ticket, and I bet it comes back stolen. I didn't use a credit card, Nathaniel said softly, and I didn't buy a ticket. Confession, Cassian pointed at him, looking at the junior officers. He admitted it. He didn't buy a ticket. I bought the landing slot, Nathaniel clarified, his voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. I leased the runway for arrival and departure for a 20-minute window. The ticket is just a generated pass for the gate agents to let me onto the tarmac to meet the incoming aircraft. Cassian stared at him for a full 5 seconds. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It was a loud, barking laugh that echoed off the concrete walls. You bought the runway? Cassian wheezed, wiping a tear from his eye. Kid, you are psychotic. You're telling me you own a plane? My family does, Nathaniel said. And where is this imaginary plane? Cassian mocked. Is it invisible like your ticket? It's on approach. ETA 12 minutes. Nathaniel checked the analog clock on the wall. If I am not on the tarmac to receive the pilot's signal, they will initiate a divert protocol. And if they divert, the airport authority gets billed for the fuel and the delay. That bill is usually around $50,000. Cassian stopped laughing. He leaned over the table, his face inches from Nathaniel's. You listen to me, you delusional little punk. There is no plane. There is no landing slot. There is just you, in a cell, waiting for the cops to come take you to booking. I'm done with your stories. Cassian grabbed the cardstock ticket from the table, the only physical proof of Nathaniel's claim. You need that, Nathaniel warned. I don't need trash, Cassian spat. He ripped the card in half, then in quarters. He let the pieces flutter down onto the metal table. Nathaniel watched the pieces fall. He didn't flinch. He didn't shout. He just looked at Cassian with a gaze that suddenly made the security chief feel very, very cold. That, Nathaniel whispered, was a very expensive mistake. Outside the interrogation room, the ecosystem of the airport churned on, but a ripple was spreading. Briella Stone, the girl with the purple hair and the professional camera, hadn't stopped recording. She was a travel vlogger with 2 million subscribers, known for exposing airline incompetence and finding hidden gems. She had been filming an intro about the best coffee in Terminal 4 when the shouting started. She had captured everything. The dismissal by Selena, the calmness of the boy, the aggression of Cassian, the way they dragged him off without him raising a hand. She sat on her suitcase, laptop balanced on her knees, editing the footage. She added a caption, racial profiling at Metro Airport. Security destroys kid for fake VIP ticket. You be the judge. She hit upload. Within 3 minutes, the video had 5,000 views. Within 10 minutes, it had 50,000. The comments were scrolling so fast, they were a blur. I know that security guard. He yelled at my grandma last year. That kid looks so calm. He knows something they don't. Wait, look at his hoodie. Is that a limited edition Loro Piana? That's like a $4,000 hoodie. Briella watched the numbers climb. She stood up and walked toward the gray door where they had taken him. She couldn't hear what was happening inside, but she could see the 2 junior officers outside the door now, looking at their phones, faces pale. They were seeing the video. They were seeing the comments. Inside the room, the atmosphere had shifted from interrogation to a standoff. Cassian was pacing. He had expected the kid to break, to cry, to admit it was a prank. But Nathaniel just sat there, looking at the shredded ticket. You can fix this, Nathaniel said, breaking the silence. Shut up, Cassian snapped. If you let me use my phone, I can call the tower. I can give them the verbal authorization code. The pilot will land. I said shut up! Cassian slammed his hand on the table. You are staying right here until the NYPD arrives. I've already called them. Suddenly, the door opened. One of the junior officers stuck his head in. Chief? You might want to come out here. Not now, Miller. I'm processing a suspect. Chief, it's trending, Miller said, his voice shaking. The video of the arrest. Cassian frowned. What video? Someone filmed it. It's on Twitter. It's on TikTok. People are tagging the airline, tagging the airport authority. And, Chief, someone identified the kid. Cassian felt a prickle of unease at the base of his neck. He looked back at Nathaniel. The boy hadn't moved. "Who do they think he is?" Cassian asked, trying to sound dismissive. Miller swallowed hard. "They're saying he's an Armitage. Like the Armitage Group. Technology, shipping, aerospace defense." Cassian froze. He knew the name. Everyone knew the name. Armitage Tech supplied the security scanners they used at the checkpoints. Armitage logistics trucks were seen on every highway in America. "That's impossible," Cassian whispered. "He looks like a—" He stopped himself. "He's in a hoodie. He's flying commercial. Armitages don't fly commercial." "I told you," Nathaniel said from the table. "I wasn't flying commercial." Cassian turned slowly back to Nathaniel. The arrogance was beginning to crack, replaced by a dawning, horrifying realization. He looked at the shredded ticket. He looked at the phone he had refused to unlock. "Who are you?" Cassian asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I am Nathaniel Armitage. My grandfather founded the company that built the biometric lock on that door you just walked through," Nathaniel said. "And my jet is currently on final approach. If I am not out there to meet it, my security detail, which is significantly better funded than yours, will assume I have been kidnapped." As if on cue, a low rumble began to vibrate through the floor. It wasn't the usual roar of a Boeing 737 taking off. This was different, deeper, closer. The sound of jet engines screaming in reverse thrust. Cassian rushed to the fake mirror, realizing uselessly that he couldn't see out. He ran to the door, shoving Miller aside. He burst out into the terminal, followed closely by Nathaniel, who simply stood up and walked out, no one daring to stop him now. The terminal windows were floor-to-ceiling glass, offering a panoramic view of the runway. Usually, the commercial gates were crowded with Deltas and Uniteds, but right now, out on the tarmac, ground crews were scattering. A massive shadow fell over the glass. A sleek, obsidian-black aircraft was taxiing. It was beautiful and terrifying. It didn't have airline colors. It had no windows on the side facing the terminal, just smooth black metal. On the tail, painted in a matte gold that barely caught the light, was a stylized crest. A lion holding a key. The Armitage crest. The jet didn't go to the private hangar. It didn't go to the cargo area. It turned sharply and taxied straight toward Gate 4, the very gate Selena Crane was manning. The plane was too big for the gate. Its wingtips swept over the jet bridge, mere feet from the glass. It came to a halt directly in front of the window where Cassian and Nathaniel stood. The engines whined down, a sound like a dying dragon. The entire terminal had gone silent. Travelers were pressed against the glass. A ramp lowered from the belly of the black jet. It wasn't a normal staircase. It was illuminated with LED strips. Two men walked down the ramp. They were dressed in black tactical suits, wearing earpieces. They didn't look like airport security. They looked like special forces. Between them walked a woman. She wore a white pantsuit that looked sharp enough to cut glass. Her hair was silver, cut into a chic bob. She walked with a cane, but she didn't lean on it. She carried it like a scepter. Magnolia Pierce, the CEO of Armitage Global, and Nathaniel's aunt. She stopped at the bottom of the ramp, ignoring the ground crew who were frantically waving wands at her. She looked up at the terminal window. She couldn't see them through the glare, but she knew. She tapped her earpiece. Inside the security office, Nathaniel's confiscated phone lit up on the table. It buzzed loudly, vibrating against the metal. Cassian looked at the plane. He looked at the woman who could buy and sell this entire airport before breakfast. He looked at Nathaniel. "You," Cassian choked out. "You really—" "I told you to check the code," Nathaniel said, stepping past Cassian. "Now, if you'll excuse me, my ride is here." And I think you have some explaining to do to the woman in the white suit. She hates waiting. Nathaniel pushed open the heavy security door leading back to the main concourse. Briella Stone was there, camera raised. "Did they arrest you?" she shouted. Nathaniel paused, looking directly into the lens. "No, they just delayed the inevitable." He walked toward the emergency exit door that led to the tarmac. The alarm would sound if he opened it. He didn't care. He pushed the bar. Clang, clang, clang. The alarm screamed. Red lights flashed, but Cassian didn't chase him. Selena Crane, standing at her podium, dropped her phone as she saw the black jet parked illegally outside her window. Nathaniel walked out onto the concrete, the wind whipping his hoodie. He walked toward the black jet, toward the woman in white. The drama had just begun, because an Armitage never forgets an insult, and karma was about to descend on Terminal 4 with the weight of $1 billion empire. The sensation of stepping from the sterile, climate-controlled airport terminal onto the active tarmac was a shock to the system. The air here was violent, a swirling vortex of burnt kerosene, baking asphalt, and the deafening whine of turbine engines. For Nathaniel Armitage, however, it felt like oxygen. He walked calmly toward the black jet, the wind whipping the hood of his vicuña sweatshirt against his cheek. Behind him, the emergency exit alarm was still screaming, a jagged, rhythmic pulse that signaled a breach of federal security. He could hear shouting, Cassian Beaumont's voice, raw and panicked. But Nathaniel didn't look back. He looked forward, toward the woman waiting at the bottom of the LED-lit ramp. Magnolia Pierce didn't shout. She didn't wave. She stood amidst the chaos of ground crews and flashing hazard lights with the stillness of a hurricane's eye. Her white pantsuit was pristine, defying the grime of the runway. As Nathaniel approached, the two tactical guards flanking her shifted slightly, scanning the windows of the terminal above where hundreds of faces were pressed against the glass. "You're late," Magnolia said as Nathaniel reached her. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the engine noise with precise articulation. She looked him over, her gray eyes narrowing at the fraying cuffs of his hoodie. "And you look like a vagrant." "It was part of the test, Aunt Mags," Nathaniel said, offering a small, tired smile. "Low profile, no entourage. The test was to see if you could navigate the world without the Armitage name paving the road," she replied, reaching out to straighten his hood, a rare maternal gesture that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "It seems the world failed the test, not you." Before Nathaniel could answer, the heavy metal door of the terminal burst open again. Cassian Beaumont spilled out onto the concrete, followed by 3 airport police officers with hands resting on their holsters. "Freeze!" Cassian screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Nathaniel. "Get on the ground! Both of you! This is a restricted area!" The 2 tactical guards flanking Magnolia didn't reach for weapons. They simply stepped forward, creating a human wall. They were a head taller than the airport police, built like linebackers, wearing matte black armor that bore no insignia other than the small gold lion crest. "I said get on the ground!" Cassian yelled, advancing. "You are under arrest for breaching a secure perimeter, trespassing, and unauthorized aircraft landing." Magnolia turned her head slowly, looking at Cassian as if he were a particularly noisy insect. She tapped her cane against the tarmac. Click, click. "Mr. Beaumont, I presume," she said. Her voice was ice. "Who are you?" Cassian demanded, though his confidence was faltering. He saw the jet. He saw the guards. He saw the sheer cost of everything in front of him. "I am the person who owns the mortgage on the land you are currently standing on," Magnolia said smoothly. "I am also the CEO of the company that manufactures the radio frequency chips in your badge, the scanners you use to harass teenagers, and the software that runs your payroll. My name is Magnolia Pierce." Cassian blinked, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. I don't care who you are. You can't just park a jet at Gate 4. This is a commercial lane." "It is a commercial lane," Magnolia corrected him. And Armitage Global just purchased the landing rights for every gate in Terminal 4 for the next hour. We paid the premium. Expedited transfer. Which means technically you are trespassing on my leased property. That's insane, Cassian stammered. You can't do that. I can, and I did. The wire transfer cleared 3 minutes ago, Magnolia said, checking a diamond-encrusted watch. Now, I suggest you lower your voice. You have detained a member of the Armitage board unlawfully. You destroyed legal documentation, and you profiled him based on appearance. He had a fake ticket, Cassian insisted, desperate to cling to the narrative that he was the hero. He refused to cooperate. The ticket was a generated prototype for a new diplomatic clearance system we are testing with the UN, Nathaniel spoke up, his voice carrying over the wind. I told you to scan the code. You tore it up instead. Cassian paled. The pieces of the cardstock were still scattered on the metal table in the interrogation room, evidence of his incompetence. Police! Arrest them! Cassian shouted at the officers behind him. They are threatening a federal officer. The lead police officer, a weary sergeant who had seen enough in his 20 years to know when he was outgunned, stepped forward. He didn't draw his weapon. He looked at the black jet, then at Magnolia. Ma'am, the sergeant said respectfully. We have a situation here. The airport director is on his way down. We need to de-escalate. But your nephew did trip the perimeter alarm. Because he was falsely imprisoned and sought safety, Magnolia countered instantly. He was fleeing a hostile environment created by your head of security. That is self-defense. The standoff was interrupted by the screeching of tires. A white airport operations SUV swerved onto the tarmac, followed by a black sedan. The doors flew open, and a man in an ill-fitting suit scrambled out. It was Director Sterling, the head of Metro International. He looked like a man watching his career evaporate. Ms. Pierce, please! Sterling jogged over, sweating profusely despite the cool wind. He pushed past Cassian, nearly knocking the security chief over. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. Director Sterling, Magnolia greeted him cold. Your staff seems to think my nephew is a criminal. They also seem to think my jet is a nuisance. No, absolutely not! Sterling waved his hands frantically. He turned on Cassian, his eyes bulging with rage. Beaumont! What the hell are you doing? Stand down! Do you have any idea who this is? He broke protocol, Cassian argued, his voice cracking. He came through the prestige lane looking like a thug. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the jet engines seemed to quiet down. Nathaniel stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and Cassian. Say that again, he said softly. Say what I looked like. Cassian looked around. He saw the cameras in the terminal window. He saw the director's furious face. He saw the tactical guards. He realized, too late, that he had walked into a trap. I was following procedure, Cassian muttered, looking at the ground. You were following your prejudice, Magnolia said. She turned to Director Sterling. Director, we are leaving. However, my legal team is currently filing an injunction against this facility, and I am freezing all Armitage technical support for this airport effective immediately. Sterling looked like he might faint. Ms. Pierce, you can't. Our baggage systems, our flight tracking, the security gates, they all run on Armitage OS. If you pull support, then I suppose you should have hired staff who know how to read a boarding pass, Magnolia said. She turned and began walking up the ramp. Nathaniel, coming? Nathaniel looked at Cassian one last time. You kept my phone, he said. Bring it to the jet. Wipe it off first. He turned and followed his aunt. Cassian stood trembling on the tarmac. He looked at Director Sterling. You're done, Beaumont, Sterling hissed, his face purple. Get his phone, give it to him, and then give me your badge. You're suspended pending an investigation. But the union, Cassian started. Screw the union, Sterling spat. Look at the window, you idiot! Cassian looked up. The entire terminal glass was lined with people holding phones. He wasn't just fired. He was the most hated man in America, and the internet was just getting started. While the drama unfolded on the tarmac, the interior of Terminal 4 had transformed into a digital war zone. The physical reality of the airport, the queues, the announcements, the smell of pretzels, had become secondary to the viral reality exploding on social media. Briella Stone sat cross-legged on the floor near Gate 4, her laptop plugged into a cleaning outlet. She was live streaming now. Her subscriber count had jumped from 2 million to 3 million in 40 minutes. The title of her stream was Billionaire Teen vs. Racist Security Live Update. "Guys, you are not going to believe this," Briella said into her microphone, her voice breathless. "That jet outside? It's basically a flying fortress. And the kid they tackled? Nathaniel Armitage. Yes, that Armitage, the heir to the tech empire." She switched her camera view to the window, zooming in on the tarmac, where Cassian Beaumont was currently handing a phone to one of the tactical guards, looking completely defeated. "Look at the security guy," Briella narrated. "Total walk of shame. But here's the tea. I'm getting DMs from people who work here. Apparently, the counteragent who started all this, Selena, is trying to hide in the break room." At the Prestige check-in counter, Selena Crane was indeed panic spiraling. She had abandoned her post 10 minutes ago, leaving a line of angry first-class passengers unattended. She was currently locked in the employee break room, clutching her personal cell phone. Her notifications were a solid block of white noise. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. People had found her. How did they find her so fast? She hadn't even given her full name. But the internet was a detective agency with zero morals and infinite resources. Someone had zoomed in on her name tag in Briella's 4K video. "Is this the lady who denied him entry? Arilas Selena Crane official? Imagine working for minimum wage and protecting the billionaire lane like it's your house. Clown behavior. I flew through there last month. She was rude to my mother, too. Karma is coming." Selena's hands shook. She tried to type a post on her Facebook page, a desperate attempt at damage control. "I was just doing my job. He looked suspicious and threatened me. The video is edited." She hit post. Immediately, the comments flooded in. "He was standing still. He spoke calmly. We heard the audio. You called the cops because you didn't like his hoodie. Own it." The door to the break room slammed open. Selena jumped, dropping her phone. It wasn't her manager. It was a man she had never seen before. He was tall, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than her yearly salary. He carried a leather briefcase and wore wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like a shark disguised as a librarian. "Selena Crane?" the man asked. His voice was smooth, cultured, and terrifying. "Who are you? You can't be in here. This is employees only." Selena shrieked, backing up against the vending machine. "I have been granted temporary clearance by the airport authority," the man said, placing his briefcase on the sticky break room table. "My name is Elias Kingsley. I am the chief legal counsel for the Armitage Family Trust." Selena felt the blood drain from her face. I didn't know who he was. I swear." "That is the problem, Ms. Crane," Elias said, opening his briefcase. He pulled out a thick stack of documents. "If he had been wearing a suit, or if he had been white, you would have scanned the ticket. You didn't know who he was, so you assumed he was nobody. You assumed he was a threat." "He crashed my computer," she cried. "He initiated a level 10 biometric handshake, which requires a verified operator to accept. You refused to accept it because you decided his ticket was fake based on optics," Elias corrected her. He slid a paper across the table. "This is a notice of intent to sue for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil rights violations." Selena stared at the paper. I can't afford a lawyer." "I know," Elias said, his voice devoid of pity. "We aren't suing you for money, Ms. Crane. You don't have enough to matter. We are suing the airport. However, this..." He slid a second paper across. "This is a subpoena for your personal communications. We have reason to believe you texted a colleague immediately after the incident. Something about trash taking itself out." Selena gasped. She had sent that text to her friend at the gate. How did they know? "We own the cell towers, Ms. Crane," Elias said, adjusting his glasses. "Figuratively speaking. But in this airport, literally. The internal repeater network is Armitage hardware." Am I going to jail?" she whispered. "That depends on the district attorney," Elias said, snapping his briefcase shut. "But as of this moment, your employment is terminated. Director Sterling signed the papers 2 minutes ago to avoid being named as a co-conspirator." "Fired?" Selena choked out. "But I have pension. Benefits." "You have nothing," Elias said, turning to the door. "You became a liability the moment you judged a book by its cover, and the Armitage family reads every single page." He walked out, leaving Selena alone with the humming vending machine and her exploding phone. Out in the terminal, the atmosphere was shifting from spectacle to unrest. The flight information screens, which usually displayed times and gates in orderly rows, flickered. Then they went black. A collective groan went up from the thousands of passengers. The announcement speakers crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently experiencing a technical difficulty with our scheduling system. Please remain in the terminal area." Briella Stone, still streaming, turned her camera to the black screens. "Guys, the screens just died. The check-in kiosks are rebooting. It looks like the whole airport is crashing." She looked at the camera, eyes wide. Did the Armitage kid just unplug the airport? The Armitage jet, the Obsidian, was more than a luxury transport. It was a flying command center. Inside, the cabin was soundproofed against the roar of the airport. The interior was done in cream leather and dark mahogany. Nathaniel sat in a swivel chair, holding an ice pack to his wrist where Cassian had grabbed him too hard. He was watching a wall of monitors that had deployed from the bulkhead. Magnolia Pierce sat opposite him, sipping a sparkling water. She looked calm, but her eyes were tracking the data streams on the screens. "Status?" she asked. "We have isolation," Nathaniel said. He tapped a keyboard on his lap. "The airport operates on the Armitage Sentinel operating system for all security and logistics. I just revoked their license key." "Consequences?" "Immediate cessation of automated baggage handling. Flight tracking is down to manual radar only. And the security checkpoints." Nathaniel pointed to the center screen. It showed a live feed from the TSA checkpoint. The metal detectors were flashing red. The X-ray belts had stopped moving. The glass gates that scanned boarding passes were locked shut. "The checkpoints are hard-locked," Nathaniel explained. "Without a valid software license, the machines default to lockdown mode to prevent tampering. No one gets in. No one gets out." "Cruel," Magnolia noted, though she sounded impressed. "Necessary," Nathaniel countered. "They detained me for 3 hours. I'm detaining their operations for 3 hours. It's proportional." "It's a siege," Magnolia said. "You've taken 20,000 people hostage to prove a point to one security guard." "No," Nathaniel said, his eyes hardening. "I'm proving a point to the system. Cassian and Selena felt comfortable abusing their power because they thought there were no consequences. They thought I was powerless. I need them to understand what true powerlessness feels like." Back in the terminal, chaos was beginning to bloom. The lines at security were not moving. Passengers were shouting at TSA agents who were frantically pressing buttons on dead machines. "Why isn't the belt moving?" a businessman yelled. "I have a meeting in Chicago." "System is down, sir. We can't clear bags," the agent yelled back. At the security command center, Director Sterling was screaming into a telephone. "Get it back online. Reboot the servers." "We tried, Director," the IT manager shouted back, typing furiously on a laptop that was refusing to connect to the mainframe. "It's not a glitch. It's a license revocation. The software says vendor authorization withdrawn. It says to contact Armitage Global Support. Then call them, Sterling shrieked. I did. I've been on hold for 10 minutes. The hold music it's just a recording of someone laughing. Sterling slammed the phone down. He looked at the monitors. The airport was paralyzed. Planes were sitting on the tarmac, unable to dock, because the jet bridges relied on the software to align with the aircraft doors. Baggage carts were stalled. The entire organism of the airport had suffered a stroke. Cassian Beaumont was sitting in the corner of the command center, stripped of his badge and gun. He watched the chaos with a hollow look in his eyes. You did this, Sterling said, walking over to Cassian. You and your ego. I didn't know he could turn off the airport, Cassian whispered. He owns the switch, you moron. Sterling grabbed Cassian by his shirt collar. You are going to go out there, and you are going to apologize. You are going to beg. To who? To the camera, Sterling said, shoving him toward the door. That girl with the purple hair, she's still streaming. Go find her. Public apology. Maybe if we humiliate you enough, they'll turn the lights back on. Cassian stumbled out of the office. The terminal was hot now. The climate control was also part of the integrated system, and it had defaulted to eco-save, shutting down the AC. The smell of sweat and frustration was rising. He found Briella Stone near the window. She was surrounded by a crowd of people who were watching her stream on their own phones, creating a weird feedback loop of reality. Mr. Beaumont? Briella shouted, pointing her camera at him. The man of the hour! The airport is broken! Is this the Armitage reaction? Cassian looked at the lens. He looked at the angry mob of passengers surrounding him. He realized that Nathaniel Armitage wasn't just rich. He was a force of nature. He had turned the airport into a prison, just like the one Cassian had tried to put Nathaniel in. Cassian started, his voice dry. I want to apologize to Nathaniel Armitage. Louder! Someone in the crowd yelled. I profiled him, Cassian shouted, tears of frustration and humiliation stinging his eyes. I judged him based on his clothes and his race. I was wrong. Please, just turn the AC back on. On the jet, Nathaniel watched the feed. He saw Cassian sweating, begging. He saw the text crawling across the screen. Or Armitage blackout trending worldwide. Magnolia leaned forward. Is that enough? Nathaniel watched for a moment longer. He saw a mother fanning her baby in the heat. He saw an elderly man sitting on his suitcase, looking exhausted. The innocent are suffering, Nathaniel said quietly. Karma has hit the target, but the splash damage is getting too high. He typed a command into his keyboard. Restore, system, default XC. Power cycling, Nathaniel said. Systems will be back up in 5 minutes. You showed mercy, Magnolia observed. I showed control, Nathaniel corrected. There's a difference. He stood up and looked out the window at the terminal one last time. Let's go, Aunt Mags. I think my point is made. And Elias has enough evidence to keep them in court for the next decade. Where to? Magnolia asked, as the pilot began the engine startup sequence. Home, Nathaniel said. I have a hoodie to throw away. It's got bad energy. As the obsidian began to push back, the lights in the terminal flickered and buzzed back to life. The AC hummed. The baggage belts started moving. A cheer went up from the crowd inside. But for Cassian Beaumont and Selina Crane, the lights would never really come back on. They stood in the brightness of the restored terminal, knowing their lives had just gone permanently dark. And in the distance, the black jet soared into the sky, a dark angel leaving judgment in its wake. 3 weeks after the blackout incident, the conference room of Kingsley, Vance and Moore felt colder than the morgue. Elias Kingsley sat at the head of the table, looking less like a lawyer and more like an executioner. Across from him, Selina Crane sat diminished, her authority stripped away along with her uniform, leaving her in an oversized cardigan and a state of visible tremor. State your name, Elias commanded, his voice smooth and dangerous. Selina Crane. she whispered, flanked by a court-appointed attorney who looked like he wanted to vanish. Ms. Crane, in your initial police report, you described my client as belligerent and threatening. Is that correct? That was my impression, she stammered. Your impression? Elias clicked a remote. The wall monitor flared to life, showing the silent security footage. It showed Nathaniel standing perfectly still, hands visible, while Selena gestured wildly, mocking him. Elias paused the video on a frame of Selena laughing. You look like a cat playing with a mouse you thought couldn't fight back. He was arrogant. He insisted he had a plane, Selena protested, desperation creeping into her voice. He did have a plane and a valid code, a code you refused to scan because of this. Elias slid a paper across the table. A text sent to your colleague. Some hood rat is trying to scam a free flight. Watch me ruin his day. The room went deathly silent. It was a joke, Selena whispered, tears spilling over. Everyone talks like that. Everyone? So the culture encourages racial profiling disguised as banter? Elias leaned forward, eyes locking onto hers. You decided his guilt based on his hoodie and his skin color. If he hadn't been Nathaniel Armitage, you would have ruined his life with a criminal record. You would have crushed him and laughed about it. I lost my job, Selena sobbed, slamming her hand on the table. The internet hates me? Isn't that enough? No, Elias said coldly, standing up. We aren't settling. We are pursuing a civil judgment to ensure this follows you forever, just like a record would have followed him. We are done here. While Selena was being dismantled, a higher stakes game unfolded in the Metro Airport Authority boardroom. Magnolia Pierce sat at the head of the table, uninvited but immovable. Opposite her was Sarah Jenkins, the interim director, sweating alongside her legal team. Ms. Pierce, Jenkins began cautiously, we apologize deeply. We are prepared to offer a substantial settlement to avoid a public trial. The lead counsel slid a check face down across the table. Elias Kingsley, fresh from the deposition, flipped it over. $75 million. The room gasped. It was go-away money. Magnolia didn't blink. She reached into her purse, produced a gold lighter, and flicked it open. She held the flame to the corner of the check, watching it curl into black ash in the crystal ashtray. We don't want your money, Magnolia said, her voice hard as diamond. The Armitage Trust makes that in 4 days. Taking it would be an insult. Then what do you want? Jenkins asked, bewildered. We sued for change. Magnolia signaled Elias, who slid a thick document across the table. The Armitage Accord. Sign it and we drop the suit. Refuse and we buy the airport's debt and foreclose. Jenkins read the headings with growing shock. Clause 1. Immediate replacement of the security firm with a community-vetted alternative. Clause 2. Implementation of blind screening protocols to remove visual bias from dispute resolution. Clause 3. Perpetual funding of the Nathaniel Armitage Aviation Scholarship for local youth. Clause 4. Permanent Armitage audit access to security logs. This gives you oversight, Jenkins stammered. You proved you cannot police yourselves, Magnolia countered. If you refuse, I release the audio of Cassian calling my nephew a thug and Director Sterling ordering evidence destruction. You'll lose your license by morning. Sarah Jenkins looked at the smoldering ash, then at her defeated lawyers. Where do I sign? Last page, Magnolia smiled, a lioness securing her pride. And one more thing, I want a plaque at the prestige counter to remind every agent that the next kid in a hoodie might just own the plane. 1 year later, Terminal 4 smelled of fresh flowers instead of anxiety. Nathaniel, now 20, walked through the automatic doors in a heavy wool coat and sneakers. The prestige area had been remodeled, open, welcoming, the imposing podiums gone. He watched a young agent, a Latino man, helping an elderly woman. A businessman in a suit tried to cut in front of a young black girl with a backpack. "Excuse me," Move aside, the suit snapped. The agent looked up. Sir, please wait your turn. This young lady was next. He turned to the girl, who looked terrified. Hi, you look lost. Let me print you a map to your gate. The girl beamed, her relief palpable. It's working, Elias said, appearing beside Nathaniel with 2 coffees. Blind screening caught 3 bias incidents last month. The culture is shifting. And Cassian? Mall security in Jersey, banned from federal transport for life, Elias confirmed. Selena is back in Ohio sending apology letters we don't read. Nathaniel looked at the pillar. A small brass plaque gleamed there, in honor of dignity. Here, character shall be judged by action, not appearance. I hated this place, Nathaniel admitted. Now it feels like I own it. Technically, Mags owns the debt. Elias checked his watch. Speaking of whom, the jet is fueled for Paris. They walked to the checkpoint. The agent didn't look at Nathaniel's sneakers or his age. She looked him in the eye. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Nathaniel replied. He walked through head high toward the black jet humming on the tarmac. He had entered as a suspect and left as a legend, a man who forced the world to look him in the eye. Nathaniel Armitage's story reminds us that prejudice often masquerades as policy. Cassian and Selena were programmed to see a thug, blinding themselves to the reality of the young man before them. The true twist wasn't the billions. It was that Nathaniel used his power not to escape consequences, but to change the system. He didn't just fire the bad apples, he burned down the poison tree and planted something new. Money can buy justice, but only character secures dignity. What would you have done in Nathaniel's shoes? Would you have stayed calm, or would you have fought back? It's terrifying to think about how differently that day could have ended if he didn't have the Armitage name behind him. That's the real tragedy. For every Nathaniel, there are thousands of others who don't have a private jet to save them. If this story fired you up, if you believe in justice served cold and karma hitting hard, do me a favor. Smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story of underdogs taking on the system. And let me know in the comments, have you ever been judged by your appearance? Let's talk about it. Until next time, stay sharp, stay kind, and never judge a book by its cover. You never know who owns the library.